So I'm here at an Electrify America charging station, DC fast charging my 2024 Chevrolet Equinox front-wheel drive 2RS. And that can only mean two things. I'm either doing DC fast charge recordings or I'm about to embark on my 70-mile-an-hour highway range test with the Equinox, and that happens to be what we'll be doing today. After I charge it to 100%, I will be driving on the New Jersey Turnpike in long loops at a constant 70 miles an hour to see just how far the front-wheel drive Chevrolet Equinox goes at highway speeds. Okay, so we're out on the road cruising at 70 miles an hour in my brand new Chevy Equinox 2RS front-wheel drive EV. Now this front-wheel drive version of the Equinox is EPA range rated at 319 miles. That's the combined EPA range rating. The highway EPA range rating is 291 miles. If I would have gotten the all-wheel drive, the dual-motor all-wheel drive Equinox, that has a combined EPA range rating of 285 miles and a highway EPA range rating of 267 miles. So the range penalty you get for getting the all-wheel drive is 34 miles combined and 24 miles of highway range. And that's EPA range rating. As we often say, it doesn't always translate perfectly to the real world, and that's part of the reason why we do these 70-mile-an-hour highway range tests. I hope at some point in the future to have the opportunity, and Super Cruise is making a lane change now. I'm not sure why, but I'll let it do its thing. Yes, I am using hands-free Super Cruise, which works great. So the range penalty is 34, 24 combined and highway. If you get the all-wheel drive version, you're going to get more power, you're going to get less range. And the one thing that I will note is, in addition to me having the front-wheel drive version, I have the RS trim, and that has bigger tires and wheels than the LT. I have 21-inch wheels with 275/40 R21 tires. They're beefy tires. So I'm sure that has an effect on the range. The LT trim has 245/55 R19s, so it has smaller wheels and thinner tires, which is better for range. Now the EPA does make manufacturers certify vehicles for the different tire size, but I'm not 100% clear on how much variation they have to have. It's making another lane change. So going back to the lane we were in before. I love the Super Cruise and the automatic lane change, but it seems like it's a little lane change happy sometimes. It changes lanes when I don't think it needs to, but I'm gonna let it do its thing and I'm just along for the ride. So the tires could be a factor here. I'm not sure exactly how much of a difference the different tire sizes have to make before the EPA makes the manufacturer recertify the vehicle. You notice some vehicles have range ratings for the 20-inch wheels and the 19-inch wheels and the 22-inch wheels. Chevrolet didn't do that with the Equinox EV. All of the front-wheel drive versions are EPA range rated at 319 miles per charge, and all of the all-wheel drive versions are 285 miles per charge, regardless of the tires they have on them. So, but it does make a difference. Exactly how much? I mean, perhaps in the future, I'll range test the same vehicle as this with the smaller wheels and tires, see if there's a difference. But that's probably not going to make that much of a difference. In any event, all the Equinoxes have an 85 kilowatt-hour battery pack. So, if you say, well, 300 miles is my goal, I'd have to average better than 3.5 miles per kilowatt hour to hit 300 miles, and that's if I completely drain the battery. I'm going to get close to that, another lane change, but I'm not going to completely drain the battery. I'm not going to drive this till it won't go any further. I will drive it well past zero, and hopefully I won't run out, which I've only done with the Chevy Bolt EV. With all the range tests I've done, I hope we don't run out here today, but if we do, we do. I'll have to call my wife and she'll have to rescue me with the Lightning, because I could use Pro Power on board to charge up the vehicle and get me to the charging station. And I'll tell you, as far as a barometer of what I'm hoping to get, I did the 70 mile an hour higher range test with the Tesla Model Y a few years ago, and the range rating is almost identical to this, and I did 270 miles. So that's kind of where I want to end up. I think I'm going to actually get a brand new 2024 Tesla Model Y soon after I do this range test and range test that, just to see, you know, how close it would get. Although it's not a completely fair test because that's going to be a all-wheel drive Model Y, and this is front-wheel drive. So I really should do the all-wheel drive Equinox and compare it to the all-wheel drive Model Y. Anyway, I digress. So what do we do to get set up for the range tests? I charged to 100%. At 100%, the Equinox was telling me it could go 334 miles, which we're not going to do that here today for sure. I set the tire pressure to the manufacturer spec, which is 42 pounds per square inch. I set the climate control to 70 degrees, and on the lowest fan setting there is, that's what I always do on all the range tests. I put the vehicle in the most efficient drive mode, which on the Equinox is normal drive mode, and I've checked the speedometer with my GPS apps to see how fast I was going. The Equinox speedometer seems right on. 70 miles an hour is 70 miles an hour. So that's what the Super Cruise is chugging us along at. And I'll check my wind app in a little bit. I checked it a little bit earlier. Wind didn't seem to be an issue. It was only about 5 or 6 miles an hour. That's nothing. We want to keep it under 10 miles an hour wind for it really to be a good range test, and that the wind isn't really affecting it, but I'll monitor that during the range test. Okay, so I'm going to keep driving now, and I will check back in at 75% state of charge. We'll see how far we've gone at that point. Alrighty, at 75% state of charge, and we have gone 73.5 miles. And in that first quarter of the range test, according to the Equinox display screen, we've used 22.2 kilowatt hour, and we're averaging 3.3 mile per kilowatt hour. Now, the interesting thing is, General Motors states that the Equinox EV has an 85 kilowatt hour battery pack, usable. But if you multiply 22.2 times 4, it's a bit higher than 85. So we'll see as this range test progresses if this corrects itself or what. I certainly don't think General Motors gave me a bigger battery pack than what they state. The only thing that I could imagine is the fact that batteries aren't like gas tanks. It's not a finite amount. 85 kilowatt hour isn't like the finite amount of the pack like an 18-gallon gas tank is. You can draw more energy or less energy depending on conditions. Temperature being one of them. You notice in the winter, EVs don't go as far. Now, part of that is because you're using the heating systems and that consumes energy, but part of it is because at colder temperatures, the pack actually is able to deliver less energy. So it can't actually deliver the full amount of kilowatt hour that it's rated at. That's because the process slows down. It's a technical reason, which it's actually above my pay grade, but I kind of understand how it works. The bottom line is it actually will deliver less energy. Now, the opposite is when it's nice and warm. And today is a beautiful day for the range test. It's 85 degrees almost the whole day so far, which is perfect range weather. The hotter the temperature, the better it is for range. Battery packs actually like to be nice and hot for range. The problem is if it gets too hot, they can degrade, but I digress. So it's a great range day. The only negative is we've gotten up to about 7.5 to 8 mile per hour winds now. And I think in the next leg, it might be a sort of a headwind, so that could be an issue. Okay, we're making another lane change. Go right ahead, Super Cruise. But other than that, it's a perfect range day. So I'm not surprised that we're seeing good numbers. I mean, we're tracking almost 300 miles, which I thought we were going to be around 275, 280 before this started. If this continues and we get close to 300, that's awesome. But let's see what happens in the rest of the trip. So the only other thing that I wanted to mention was the heating and cooling system. I told you earlier that I set it to 70 degrees and on the lowest fan setting. I usually set the cars between 68 and 70 degrees. Basically, just whatever makes me comfortable. The Equinox's air conditioning is very powerful. I've noticed that in the couple of weeks that I've owned it. So I actually had to raise it up to 73. I was too cold at 70 degrees. So it's actually set at 73 degrees now. And honestly, I feel cooler than I do in my other vehicles when I have them set at 70. But I just want to note that if you see the temperature on my camera or something, I know people nitpick stuff. They'll call me out on it. Tom, you said you set it to 70 degrees. I saw it set to 73. Well, that's why. At 70 degrees, I was too cold. All right, well, we'll check back in when we're at 50% state of charge and halfway home. Alrighty, at 50% state of charge, we actually went 1 mile farther in that quarter of the range test. We went 74.5 miles, and now we're at 148 miles driven. Our consumption rate has gone up a little bit, so now we're only averaging 3.2 mile per kilowatt hour. I think that was because we had a little bit of a headwind in that leg of the range test. However, we went a mile farther, which is kind of weird. And again, we have used more battery capacity than what we're supposed to be able to use. We're at 44.9 kilowatt hour used already. So we're tracking having access to almost 90 kilowatt hour. So that's interesting. It's a little more than I would expect, even with the fact that the temperature is perfect for range tests. I'm driving at a constant 70 miles an hour, so I'm not stressing the pack. If you drive your EV hard, you'll also lose some usable capacity because you'll lose some energy with heat. There'll be more heat losses. But at a steady 70 miles an hour, it's a really low stress driving. You're not asking the vehicle to speed up. You're not regenning, so you're not creating more heat. Pack likes this nice constant 70 miles an hour. And the temperature's been between 85 and 87 degrees the whole day. So it's great range weather. The only thing is it's a little bit more wind than what I would like. We're at 7 or 8 miles an hour wind now. Not terrible, but I mean, if we were down to like 2-3 miles an hour, this would be the perfect range test, but that's still not that bad. Okay, so we're tracking close to 300 miles, which is more than what I thought would be at this point. I really thought we were going to finish up with around 275, 285, somewhere there. We might even beat 300, which is pretty good. And we'll check in at 25%, and I think we'll have a really good idea at that point if we're going to hit the magic 300 or not. State of Charge is powered by Qmerit. After I've helped you decide which electric vehicle charging equipment you're going to buy, follow the link in the description of my videos and let the EV charging installation professionals at Qmerit install it. So we're at 25% state of charge, and the pattern has continued. In each leg, we've gone farther. We actually went 77 miles in that leg. And when the state of charge ticked 25%, we had driven exactly 225 miles. That is on perfect track for exactly 300 miles, which will make me pretty happy. That would be a super result. We're going to get close to it. Whether we hit 300 or not, I'm not sure, but we're going to get really close. Now, I had a little bit of a problem with the energy usage. Well, first of all, let me say we actually got a little more efficient in that leg. I think it was because the wind was to our back. We back up to 3.3 miles per kilowatt hour. So overall, 3.3 miles per kilowatt hour, a little bit more efficient in that leg. However, about 12 miles after we hit 50% state of charge, I pulled off the turnpike and made a bathroom break. The good thing about me doing the range tests on the turnpike, number one, it's very flat. There's not a lot of elevation change, but also there's a lot of rest stops, and they're literally right off the highway. You pull off the highway 200 feet, park the car, shut it down, walk in, come back out, and you're right back out on the highway. It doesn't affect the range test at all. However, this is a new vehicle for me. I'm not used to all the features and everything. The energy usage screen resets when you turn the vehicle off. I thought it would reset with your trip odometer, not this trip. So luckily, I actually looked at the screen before I got out of the car. And if you remember, at the 50% state of charge, we had consumed 44.9 kilowatt hour. When I stopped for my restroom break, we were at 48.4 kilowatt hour. So I used 3.5 kilowatt hour, drive about 12 miles. I went like, I think it was 11.8 miles or something from that, the 50% state of charge point to when I pulled off and made a bathroom break. So now I have to add that 48.4 kilowatt hour to the display here. And as you can see, the display reset. So the total kilowatt hour that I've used in that segment was 23.2 kilowatt hour, not what's displayed here. And our overall kilowatt hour usage now is 68.2. Again, we are tracking to use much more than 85 kilowatt hour. Well, I say much more, a few kilowatt hour more. It's just still, this very rarely happens in electric vehicle range tests that I finish up using more kilowatt hour than what the OEM states is the capacity. Wouldn't be the first time, but it's rare when it happens. But I'm pretty sure that's what's going to happen in this range test. I'm going to finish up somewhere around 88 or 89 kilowatt hour. Again, I'm not going to run out. I'm going to drive to the charging station under the vehicle's own power. My buddy Kyle at Out of Spec has a whole crew of people, and he'll run the cars till they shut off and then tow them back to his Out of Spec facility. Yeah, I'm not that high tech here in New Jersey, but I think I do a pretty good job representing about what the average person should expect driving at 70 miles an hour in these conditions. And if I leave 2 or 3 miles on the table at the end, I think that's acceptable. But I'll drive the vehicle until the pedal response is really squishy, where it won't maintain highway speeds. And as far as I'm concerned, that's it. If I can't do 70 miles an hour, the 70 mile an hour range test is over. I'm not going to drive around the last 3 or 4 miles at 30 miles an hour just so I can squeeze the pack until it's completely drained. But so continuing to drive here, it's getting dark. I'm hoping that we hit that 300 number. We're going to get real close. I'll probably check back in when we're at a really low state of charge and I'm driving that last couple miles to the charging station, so you can see if I actually make it or if I run out. Remember, the only time I ever ran out was in a Chevrolet vehicle, the Bolt EV, and that's because for some crazy reason, once you get down like under 10 miles of estimated remaining range, GM decides they're going to remove your estimated miles and just say low. And like, it just drives me nuts. There's another thing that used to drive me nuts. They wouldn't put a numeric state of charge on the driver's display. I'm happy to report that in my Equinox, it now has a numeric state of charge on one of the 5 different displays that you can do. I really like you can switch between 5 different displays in the Equinox, and on one of them you get a numeric state of charge. I just hope that it remains there until it's 0, because I know the mileage is going to go away and say low, but hopefully the state of charge will remain, and that way I can really drive this thing down. With the Bolt, that was part of the reason why I ran out. I didn't know the state of charge, I didn't know the remaining miles, and I ran like a mile short of the charging station and had to get towed. So I really don't want to get towed. I really don't want to run my car, this is my car, till it stops, but I'm going to run it pretty close. So we'll check back in at the bitter end. All right, so we are off the highway. I pulled off the highway at right around 300 miles, and we're gonna make it because we pulled off the highway at 2% state of charge. I couldn't have gone past the exit for the charging station and then come back. We wouldn't have made it. So I had to stop. I'd like to pull off the highway right at 0% state of charge, but I couldn't do it here today. So we're gonna probably roll in at about 1%, and I'm at 303 miles now. So we crushed it, man. We more than 300 miles. The Equinox front-wheel drive, at least, is a really good road tripper as far as range goes. Charging's another story, but I have to say I made another mistake. As soon as I pulled off the highway, I realized I needed to get another camera out of the back. So I pulled into a parking lot and got out. And as soon as I got out of the car shut off. I know it does that. I just wasn't thinking. And it reset the energy meter again. Okay, so the EA station here is completely full. Completely full. Wow, I'm just going to do a loop by it. And then we'll see. Let me get my camera out. can't go this way because there's shopping carts there. So let's put it on video. And holy cow, look at this. All of the stations are full. And there's 6 cars waiting. Oh no, it's gonna be a really long night for me. Oh God. And I can't possibly go anywhere else. And they're like all ID4s. ID4, no, that's ID4, Ioniq 5, Ioniq 5, Ioniq 5, ID4, ID4. Oh, I'm gonna be here for a while. But so anyway, I'm at 1% state of charge. If I go out and do another couple loops around the parking lot, I would imagine I'm going to be 2 or 3 more cars deep. I'm at 303 miles driven now. Matter of fact, let me show you guys where we're at here. We are at 303.2. We're averaging 3.4. The consumption rate got a little bit better. I'm averaging 3.4 miles per kilowatt hour now. That last quarter, we definitely had the wind to our backs in that last quarter. It was just enough to give us a little bit more consumption. So now let's take a look really quick at the energy info. Let me see here. Energy uses. Okay, so luckily, when I got out of the car, I had the energy usage screen up the whole time because I'm watching the kilowatt hour. And I remember when I pulled up and I wrote it down when I got back in the car and saw that it had reset, it was at 41.1 kilowatt hour. And if you remember, we were at 48.4 when it shut off the last time. So when you add those two together, you get 89.5 kilowatt hour used. That's what we were tracking the whole time. If you remember, each quarter when I was adding up the amount of kilowatt hour used, we were tracking like 90 kilowatt hour. So that was 89.5. Right now it's showing that I used 0.8. So right now I'm at 90.3 kilowatt hour used at 303 miles driven, 1% state of charge. I know it's going to tick down probably soon. Actually, I can shut the car off. When you shut the car off, the remaining miles shows again. Right now it's just saying low, but when I shut the car off, it will come back on. So let me shut the car off. Off, vehicle off. Let's see, low. It says 3 miles. Let me show you here. 1% state of charge and 3 miles remaining. So you can, I'll turn it back on. You could call it at whatever you want. I drove 303.2 miles. Car's saying I can go 3 more miles. I'm sure I could at least go 2 more miles, but I'm already, let me see, 1, 2, I think one car just pulled up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cars in the hole. Actually, there's somebody here that's in an area, and they're not in line. I don't know if they're going to jump. So I'm either 6th or 7th right now in line to charge. And I'm going to, I'm going to call it at like 305 because the car's saying I could go three more miles. That would give me 306. We'll shave it a little bit, and I'm going to call it at 305. It's fantastic range test for the Equinox EV. The combined EPA range rating is 319. The highway range rating is 291. So we beat that now by 12 miles, and we still have 3 miles left in the tank. So, 70 miles an hour, the Equinox is a good road tripper. Charging's another story. I've already been doing a bunch of DC fast charge tests, and vehicle does not charge well. I'm going to do now a 0 to 100 charge recording on a 150 kilowatt DC fast charger. I've already done a 0 to 100 charge recording on this vehicle on a 350 kilowatt DC fast charger. I typically don't do all the recordings on both 150 and 350 units, but I'm going to do it with the Equinox because the Equinox has unusually low pack voltage, and that is affecting its ability to charge quickly on 150 kilowatt DC fast chargers, even though the maximum charge rate is 150 kilowatts. So you would say, oh, well then, you know, you can go as fast on that as you can on a 350. That's not the case. Because the pack voltage is so low, you're going to be able to only pull 150 kilowatts from a 350 kilowatt DC fast charger. Most all of the 150s in the country, there's a few that can deliver 500 amps, but most of them are limited to 350 amps. And because the pack voltage is so low, it's going to charge slower on a 150 than it will on a 350. But that's a separate video in itself. I'm going to have a lot of charging videos here on the Equinox EV, and I'm also going to do a summary of all the stats from today here. I'll put it on a nice chart and present that tomorrow in the final so we say final analyzing of what happened here with this range test. So I'm going to wait in line here, plug in and charge up. But the next scene, I'm going to cut to me back home tomorrow, where I put everything on paper and we'll analyze just how this worked and what happened with the kilowatt hours used and the consumption rate and all that stuff. All right, I'm not done yet. It's about 10 minutes later, and I've just been sitting here idling, I guess. What do you call idling with an electric vehicle? Well, I've just been sitting here statically. Yes, the air conditioning is on, and the state of charge just hit 0. So I must have been really close when I pulled in here. I knew I was. Let me shut the car off and see if it says different amount of miles now. Low. Now it says 2 miles. So it's at 0% state of charge, and it's still saying that I can go 2 miles. So there's a little bit left in the battery pack, maybe, you know, half a kilowatt hour or something like that. But we definitely drew more than 90 kilowatt hour on this range test out of a vehicle that is supposed to have an 85 kilowatt hour battery pack. Anyway, like I said, we'll dive into this a little deeper when I do my summary tomorrow. All right, well, that went pretty well. I don't know if you guys could notice, but I was really tired at the end of that range test, and the last thing I wanted to see was the 6 cars in front of me pulling up to the Electrify America charging station. And there's a bit of a backstory to why I was so tired. You know, sometimes when I do these range tests, I don't get off on the right foot and I have to scrap it and redo it. And that's what happened with the Equinox. When I started yesterday, I was about 40 minutes into the range test, and there was an accident on the road that pretty much shut down where I was going. And after sitting there for a few minutes, I realized this just wasn't going to happen. So as soon as I could get off the highway, I did. I came home, rested up a little bit, charged it back up, and waited a couple of hours, and then did the range test. So this was like an all-day event for me. And the last thing I wanted to see was a line when I pulled into the Electrify America charger. So anyway, 303 miles, pretty good. And as I mentioned, the vehicle showed that it had 2 miles of remaining range. I'm sure I could have gotten 305 or 306 out of it. But again, I don't like to just drive the last 4 or 5 miles at like 30 miles an hour in circles. It's a 70 mile an hour highway range test. I like to pretty much drive as much as I can and then pull off the highway and plug in, and that's where we're at. I usually time it pretty good where I'm at 0, but you know, there's only so many exits I can get off at and turn around. So as I'm calculating at the end, sometimes it doesn't work out where I hit 0 and I'm at 1% like I was here. But I think we did a pretty good job of fair representation. And as I said, it turned to 0 as I was sitting there waiting for my turn. So I was just about ready to hit 0 when we pulled into the EA station. Okay, so 303 miles is pretty darn good. We beat the highway EPA range rating of 291. We got close to the combined EPA range rating of 319, which very rarely do we exceed that in a constant 70 mile an hour highway range test. There are a few vehicles that do, but you know, more often than not, we don't reach the combined EPA range rating. But I think the Equinox did really well. So let's take a quick look at a summary of all the data that we accumulated in that range test. Okay, from 100% down to 75% state of charge, I drove 73.5 miles. The vehicle showed that I had used 22.2 kilowatt hour, and we were averaging 3.3 miles per kilowatt hour. From 75% down to 50%, I drove 1 mile farther, 74.5 miles. Now we're at 148 miles, which is very close to tracking 300 total miles. We used 22.7 kilowatt hour in that segment, and we were at total kilowatt hour used of 44.9 kilowatt hour, more than what we were supposed to be at 50% state of charge. And we're averaging 3.2 miles per kilowatt hour. From 50% down to 25%, I drove 77 miles, and we were now at 225 miles, perfectly on target for 300 miles for the range test. And in that segment, we used 23.2 kilowatt hour for a total amount of kilowatt hours at this point consumed of 68.1. And our consumption rate at this point got a little bit better. Now we're back up to 3.3 miles per kilowatt hour. And in the final leg, from 25% down to when I pulled into the EA DC fast charge station, I drove 78.3 miles. We were at 303.3. You might have noticed in the car I said 303.2. That's because that little distance I drove to plug in, the car turned over one more tenth of a mile. So I actually ended up with 303.3 miles in that segment. We used 22.1 kilowatt hour for finish up with 90.2 kilowatt hour and a final consumption rate of 3.4 miles per kilowatt hour. So while I'm really happy with that result, over 300 miles at 70 miles an hour, fantastic result for the Equinox EV front-wheel drive. I have to mind you, still have to range test the all-wheel drive version, which I will at some point in the future. What is kind of bothering me a little bit is the fact that the vehicle showed it used over 90 kilowatt hour, and the battery is supposed to be 85 kilowatt hour. I mentioned earlier, you can pull slightly more than the battery's rating, depending on the temperature of the battery, if it's nice and warm, if you don't stress the pack so there's less losses with heat. I've seen EVs pull a little bit more than what the manufacturer claims, but like 1, maybe 2 kilowatt hour more. And this was more than 5 kilowatt hour more, and it might have been close to 6 if I drove it till it stopped. So, I definitely have to follow up with some questions to GM about this. And I have some other data that supports that maybe it's slightly larger than 85 kilowatt hours. And that's my charge recordings. I've already done a 0 to 100% charge recording on an EVgo 350 kilowatt DC fast charger. And in that session, the charging station displayed that it had dispensed over 100 kilowatt hours. And after this range test, I charged on 150 kilowatt Electrify America DC fast charger from 0 to 100%. And the station showed that it dispensed more than 97 kilowatt hour. So with the charging session on the EVgo 350 kilowatt charger, that's 18% more kilowatt hour than what the vehicle's supposed to have. And the EA session was 15% more. Now, there's always charging losses, and there's always energy that goes to the vehicle's thermal management system. So I always end up pulling more energy than what the battery's rating is when I charge from 0 to 100%. But in my recordings over the years, it seems like it's somewhere between 7% and about 12 or 13% as like the range where the charging losses are. The Equinox was 15% on the 150 and 18% on the 350, higher than anything else that I think I've recorded in the past. So it leads me to wonder if the pack really doesn't have more energy than 85 kilowatt hour. Is it a 87 kilowatt hour battery pack, or 88 kilowatt hour, or 89, somewhere in that area there? Because both the range test and my charge recordings seem to support that it's bigger than what GM states, which is very interesting. I will absolutely follow up with General Motors. Once I have some more charge recordings, I'm doing about 15 different charge recordings from all different start points. I'm gonna make a video that pretty much maps out what you could expect when you charge on a 150 kilowatt DC fast charger and on a 350. I typically don't have to do this with EVs because most of them, at least the ones that can't accept more than 150 kilowatts, would be the same on either charger. But the Equinox's unusually low pack voltage makes the fact that even though it's a maximum charge rate's 150 kilowatts, you will charge faster if you're on a 350 kilowatt DC fast charger, which is very unusual. And I will try to demonstrate that in my DC fast charging video so people understand exactly what the difference is going to be if they plug in at 10% or 20% or 30%. I'll have that all mapped out in my charts and graphs. It's going to take me a while to get all this, so give me a little time, but I've been doing a lot of recording so far. And that's really, to me, even though this was a range test video, that came out to be my biggest surprise, was the fact that there's something going on there with the amount of kilowatt hour that the vehicle seems to have access to. This won't be the last you've heard me talk about it here on State of Charge. I will push that to the side. Let's go back to the range test. I'd like to hear what you guys think about the result. I thought it was great. I'm interested in doing range testing this against some of the competing EVs. For sure, a Tesla Model Y. My friend Pete Bremy just got a brand new Tesla Model Y like a month ago. So I think we're going to do a side-by-side range test. I won't do a dedicated 70 mile an hour like a highway range test. I think we'll do a mixture where we'll drive like maybe 30-40% on off the highway, and then get on the highway and drive for 150 miles, then get off. Try to simulate what somebody might drive normally, see which one goes further. Now, I know that won't be a perfect range test because this is the front wheel drive, the Model Y is all wheel drive, but we could also maybe repeat it once I get the access to an all-wheel drive version. I just think it'll be an interesting comparison between the two vehicles because their specs line up very closely. Their EPA rated range is within 1 mile of each other. The Tesla's is at 320, this is 319. The overall sizes of vehicle are very similar. So I think that would be a good comparison. But I'd like to hear from you guys about what other comparisons and what other tests you'd like me to do with the Equinox, what videos you want me to put out. I have this guy for 2 years. Of course, I'm going to do range tests and charging tests, but what other things would you like to see me put out on it? Because I know the Equinox has a lot of interest in this vehicle because it's one of the most affordable electric vehicles on the market today that has really good range. And the Equinox itself has always been a very popular model for Chevrolet. So I think that combination is going to make it the type of electric vehicle that a lot of people have interest in. So let me know what you're interested in seeing me produce on this, and I'll try to put out as many videos on the Equinox EV as possible. Listen, if this is your first time here at State of Charge, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any upcoming electric vehicle news and reviews. And as always, thanks for watching.